views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. Happy holidays, everybody. This is our holiday show, and what we've done is put together just two of our best interviews of the year. I think you're really going to learn something and enjoy them. For our first segment this evening, we're going to go back to earlier this year in September when we interviewed a reporter named Manny Fernandez, who many people may remember was a Bronx reporter, a reporter in the Metro section of the New York Times, and covered the Bronx a little while back. But since that time, the New York Times reassigned him down to Texas, and he was the first reporter in the country, in the world, to get into the areas where they were securing some of the migrant children that had been separated from their parents at the Mexican border. And so we conducted a one-on-one interview with Manny Fernandez, and he told us all about what it was like, literally, to walk into those places and see some of those children. Very exclusive and very important interview. Take a look. We go down to Harlingen, Texas, and we say to my longtime friend, and maybe yours too, Manny Fernandez. Nice to have you with us, Manny.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great.
My heart is in Texas and in the Bronx, so it's great to. Thanks for having me on.
And I'll explain to people who might recall or might not recall. Manny works for the New York Times, and I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago, maybe a little more than that, he covered the Bronx for the New York Times, and that's where Manny and I met. And since then, he had moved down to cover Texas for the New York Times, and he's been right on top of the border, literally, to give us some insight. So I thank you so much for joining us. Manny, you were with that first and maybe only group of reporters that got into this former Walmart where some of these children are being housed. And I'm looking at the article right here. You did it on June 14th. It published in the Times. Tell me a little bit about the process of getting through so you actually got in, and then we'll talk about what you might have seen when you looked at children and others who were detained.
Sure. The process really started for me and other reporters after Senator Merkley tried to get into that shelter at the former Walmart in Brownsville, Texas. He tried to get in. He was turned away. They called the police on him. And that whole episode really kind of brought national attention to that site. And once that happened, I was not alone. They were flooded with media requests to go in to sort of find out what was it that he wasn't allowed to see. And I think people were generally curious about it. And so I just sent in my request, and then it took several days. I think that the federal officials and the people that run that shelter kind of hunkered down and tried to decide what it was they wanted to do. And after a few days, they basically invited myself and a few other mostly national and state media outlets to tour the site. So basically, it was me sending in a request, hearing nothing from anyone for several days, and then suddenly saying, can you be in Brownsville tomorrow for a tour? And of course, I was already here, so it worked out.
Pretty easy to do. What were you allowed to do and what were you not allowed to do?
Yeah, sure. There were a few ground rules. One is that we were not allowed to interact with the children. We were not allowed to interview them. And we were not allowed to sort of disrupt any of the programs or classes that were happening. And we were also not allowed to take pictures. So we were actually told to leave our cell phones in the car. And I did. And, it was very controlled in that way. It was fairly brief. It sounds like a long time. I was there for 90 minutes. But once we got there, asked questions, got on a tour, ask questions at the end and throughout the tour, that 90 minutes really flew by.
Mm.
And that's kind of how it went.
Um, Now, anybody can check up. You can look up the article. I certainly have read the article. There were 1,500 children there at the time. Maybe an overview of what you saw, and then what you thought was, let's put a value on it, what was good and what was disturbing. So, in general, what did you see?
Sure. I mean, in general, the first thing that hits you, the thing that really kind of sinks in, is the sheer size of it. Is sort of overwhelming.
Mm.
I mean, imagine a giant Walmart. Imagine they've gutted that Walmart, and imagine that they have built walls, hallways, bedrooms, classrooms, medical offices
Wow.
within that facility, and spent a lot of money on it. So it was, sort of not exaggeration to say it was sort of like a mini city or a mini school that was happening inside of that facility. Now, the first thing is that a lot of people, there's different images coming out and different reporting about different facilities on the border. These kids, these immigrant kids, are kept in a variety of different places throughout their stay here in America. And one of those places is Border Patrol detention facilities, which are those sort of steel cages that people have seen pictures of. They are in these sort of chain link pens, actually at Border Patrol facilities. This is not one of those. This is a shelter that is run by a private contractor. They get federal money to run it. They get a lot of federal money to run it. And it's also a state licensed child care facility. So Texas state regulators are in and out of that building pretty frequently, doing inspections, doing unannounced inspections, and making sure that what they are doing fits with state child care facility standards.
It seemed,
And
excuse
so,
me,
yeah,
Manny, it seemed to me when you described the facility and the fact that, I mean, we know how large a Walmart is, and then that it was actually constructed inside. I mean, that's the size of building an educational complex, so to speak. That is a lot of money. You mentioned, do you know how much money it is? And that would suggest to me that this wasn't a last minute kind of like, okay, now we're going to do this. This would have to have been a planned operation, because in order to construct a facility like that, you had to know that you were going to be bringing potentially children or families in there.
yeah, absolutely. It has been open since early 2017, and it was built as a permanent site. There's very little emergency sort of about it. You see it, and it's more than 1,000 employees. They have that huge parking lot. There's basketball courts. There's soccer, an area for soccer. When we came in, there happened to be a Tai Chi class happening,
Hmm.
and so we were walking around. I'm doing interviews. I'm talking to the people who are running the shelter, and I hear this sort of Asian music in the background. And I turn and look, and there's basically a certified Tai Chi instructor leading the immigrant
Wow.
kids and members of the staff in a Tai Chi session
Hmm.
in a rec room.
Hmm.
And so, you know, this group that runs this shelter, it's called Southwest Key. Southwest Key is one of the biggest shelter operators. They look at this site as one of their shining examples of what these shelters can be. They're very proud of it.
Well,
Uh,
it sounds
yeah,
like it's well run, and if you're going to house children, or you're giving them something to do, you're helping to stimulate their growth. So I think in terms of the question I asked, that would be on the good side. That sounds like they were cared for. I assume there's a culinary facility, so they can a cafeteria, so they can have. I'd like to think somewhat nutritional food. You want all children to grow up well. Then what? Or was there anything here that you found disturbing when you went in there and you said, gee, it kind of looks like a nice operational program there?
sure. Yeah, no. I mean, on the surface during the tour, the conditions, I found nothing disturbing about the conditions. Um, they Now they are kept indoors for most of the day, and that's probably the most the detail that sort of sticks out the most as far as the conditions go. They are given, I believe it's 2 hours of outdoor time on the weekdays, 3 hours on the weekends, and plus they also get taken on field trips to parks, to churches, to soccer fields. So they have sort of a limited outdoor experience, and that was, problematic. I think a lot of people, that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, to sort of have children indoors all day. I'm a dad myself, and I know how difficult that can be. And so there's that. But so a lot of the problems are under the surface. They're not visible, and they only sort of come out when you start looking at different state violations, when you start sort of digging in a little bit. And one example of that is, we went on this tour, and I saw a lot of, the nice conditions. And it was only after the tour, after I got out of there, that the city of Brownsville sent me some of the fire inspection reports for that building. And they failed a couple of their fire inspections over the last several months. They passed their most recent one, so they are good as far as the fire inspection goes. But they did fail for different reasons, for sprinkler system problems. And so it's one of those things where, nobody mentioned that, during the tour.
Right. Well, they weren't about to tell you that. I mean, let's
exactly.
Let's be fair.
Yeah. And so it sort of shows that on the surface, a lot of what they do and a lot of what I saw was fine for the kids, and nothing seemed disturbing. But that beneath the surface, there's certainly various issues, as with any other institution, that an institution that big, that has grown that rapidly, is going to have problems.
And then, of course,
they're no exception.
Yeah, and then, of course, the question, I mean, let's say you go to a nice summer camp, or you go away for a while and you miss your parents for a week or 2 weeks, and then you kind of wonder what's going on at home, and maybe you get letters back and forth while you're in summer camp. So this, maybe when you looked at it, looked like a, kind of a nice summer camp, so to speak. But then when you think about the kids don't really know when they're getting out, I'm assuming many of them have not had contact with their parents. Then you start to say, gee, late at night, a kid is sitting there by himself, male or female, and saying, gee, what is my life? What is going to happen? That has got to be a very challenging and disturbing concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that I could add is, again, after the tour, only recently, in the last couple of days, I was told about a 15-year-old boy that was outdoors in that outdoor recreation time, ran to the fence, climbed over the fence, and fled. And so they had a runaway on this past Saturday. A 15-year-old boy from Honduras ran away from the site.
Yeah, so he wasn't all that happy, and he wanted to be somewhere else. I mean, that would be the reason he would take that chance.
Absolutely. As one of the local officials here told me, if it's such a great facility, why do you run away from it?
Well, there you go. I really want to thank Manny Fernandez for taking the time to be with us and at that time give us what really was an extraordinary insight, an extraordinary look into what was going on with children who were literally behind walls, and nobody really got in to see it. So that was kind of a special moment. We're going to lighten it up and do a much more holiday type feature right after we take a short break. It's a photographer who became a filmmaker. And so you'll get to review that with us right after we take a short break.
Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. Yeah, I get it.
This is the story of a boy who is very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help. And slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. And they're still with you right now. But How well do you know them?
You don't know my name.
You think getting dumped by text is harsh? Try getting dumped by a tennis ball. My ex-owner drove me out to the woods, yelled fetch, and by the time I brought the ball back, he was gone. Yeah, I was pissed. But the folks at the shelter helped me let go of my anger. I learned coping skills, like taking it to the hole. Boom! Now I'm ready to fetch again. But how about I throw and you run and get it?
Welcome back to the Bronx Buzz. This is our holiday show, our end-of-year wrap-up, so to speak. And we've got a really fun segment. This gentleman, his name is Victor Chu, is a photographer and actually was a photographer, but now he's moved into film. And he came in to show us a segment or two from a film that he was working on. It's almost done. And I thought, number one, it was well done. And number two, it kind of gave us a real good chuckle. And I thought it was a real good way to ring out the old and ring in the new. So let's take a look at the interview we did in November with photographer / filmmaker Victor Chu. I was thinking of David Cruz from the Norwood News. Victor Chu, who's been a wonderful photographer for local papers, and he's done freelance work and all kinds of other stuff, is now making films.
Exactly.
Okay? And the guy next to you, and wait till you see this guy, Chris Grant, is, let's see, actor, comedian, and everything else, and he is unabashed as a Met fan, and that's an interesting concept here in the Bronx. Nonetheless. Victor, talk to me. I'm jumping the gun. You've been a photographer. You lived in the Bronx for a while,
Yes.
and you took professional. I mean, I'm doing my own interview. Did professional photos, and we collaborated on a number of different projects. How did you go, and why did you go from taking photographs to making films?
Well, in 2014, I made a drone film, an aerial film of New York City that went viral on YouTube, and it was covered by a bunch of...
How come I never saw that? That's terrible. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's on YouTube.
All right, I'll go find it.
You gotta visit YouTube.
And what was it? Was it called anything for people who want to see it?
It's called The Ultimate...
I'm writing it down.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The Ultimate Aerial Video of New York City.
All right.
So
now, were there, I have to ask this, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, regulations for drones in New York City? I thought you're not really allowed to do that.
well, I did that in 2014. So
Before there were regulations?
before there was, much talk. Like, no one really bothered me back then. It
Wow.
was just like one security guard.
So it went well, and then let's move us to the next step.
So
After you shot the drone footage that went viral.
right. So after it went viral, I started doing a lot more video because I had a fan base and a lot of people emailing me because I went on the news and everything.
Wow.
Pix 11 and News 12, and
now BronxNet.
BronxNet, yeah.
and so then what were your goals? Like, what did you set out to do? And we have some clips. You're going to love the clips, by the way.
Thank you. So I started doing a lot more aerial films and.
Yeah,
grew
let's
my
show.
film.
While he's talking, we've got that beautiful aerial film that you shot. So let's show some of that. But tell me again, you did a lot more kind of drone. Look at this; it's just spectacular.
Thank you.
Artistically, a challenge when you've been a still photographer to do something like this, or is it pictures are pictures?
I think, for me, I can't speak for other people. For me, I just have a feel of the area, like in my head. Like I have like a three-dimensional.
Visualize it.
A visual.
That comes from your experience as a photographer.
As a photographer, but also, I don't know.
Hard
I
to
think
say.
video games helped a little bit.
Video games.
And like I used to build like three-dimensional like worlds at one point. And
so now you visualize them, you get to a place and you can take
I have an
them.
idea how it looks from the sky.
Right. And then we're going to bring Chris into the dialogue in a minute. So now this film we're going to talk about today, is this like a first feature type film? Where is this at in your career and your productivity?
Right.
It's called The Adventures of Cheap Chad.
Right. The Adventures of Cheap Chad is originally was supposed to be a short film, but we ended up writing a lot and it didn't fit into the 14, 15 minminutes.
So it's a short.
It's not a short.
It's not.
It turned into a feature film.
A feature film, like a 90-minute film?
Yeah, 90 minutes. We haven't counted it yet. But
When will it be released, or because we're seeing it for the first time here, right?
Well,
Pretty much?
this is a this is going to be this is not the first time. We're still shooting a little bit. We have like a couple more scenes left.
Well, so that's what I mean. If nobody else has seen it, right?
Well,
other than these guys.
The YouTube.
I'm trying so hard to get a little something
on
out of
Instagram.
this.
Some people have seen it on
Anyway,
Instagram.
Chris Grant, the bottom line says comedian, actor, and all that stuff. You're a Bronx guy. Tell me about how you got to where you are right now.
Well, I'm an only child, and I grew up in the Marble Hill section of the Bronx.
Okay.
And a lot of the time I spent entertaining myself was watching, age-restricted comedy shows at like 8, 9, and 10 years old, and then reciting them in school and getting in trouble for it. And so one day I had an opportunity to play Hagrid in the Harry Potter play in 7th grade.
This is a great story. I love it. No, I'm loving it. I'm loving every word that he said so far. But we're gonna have to keep going because I want to show some clips.
Long story short, I fell in love with acting once I set foot on that stage. And ever since then, I've just done it all. I've been writing, I've been doing stand-up comedy since I was 13.
Have you done some of the writing on this film, or you just accepted what they're giving you?
Unofficially. So
all right.
So what Vic does is he'll say, all right, I'm going to email you the script. I need you to learn these lines, and we're going to shoot in Queens. I'm going to need you about 3 hours. All right, no problem. I'll show up to Queens. I'll read the script. We'll start shooting, and the lines will be completely different. But it's in the same
because of the way you feel and the way
right.
And you're okay with it.
Well, the whole film is based on improv, so we have a little script.
You know, it's very fascinating, and we're going to show this first. Let me show it, and then I'll tell you what my impression is. Okay, so here it is, our first look at the adventures. Some people have seen it, but we have not seen it. The Adventures of Cheap Chad, produced by Victor Chu.
Yep.
All right, and Chris Grant is not in this first clip. I'm sorry.
Oh, God, I am sorry about that. There you go. Sorry again. Sir, wait, sir. What? You broke my glasses. What? When you bumped into me, you broke my glasses. No, excuse me. Wait, hold on. No, you bumped into me. I didn't break your glasses. I did not bump into you, sir. Yes, you did. No, I did not bump into you. I was minding my business. I was minding my business. You came out and you bumped into me and you broke my glasses. You didn't even say you were saying goodbye. You weren't even looking. There was glass. There never was a lens in there. Because you broke the lens out of the glasses, sir. Sir, tell the truth. You tell the truth. Tell the truth. No, you tell the truth. Tell the truth. You tell the truth. They were broken to begin with. You're trying to get glasses. You broke your glasses. Are you accusing me? Yeah. You couldn't. Oh, you are the devil! Yeah, I am. You are the devil, and you are going to compensate me for my glasses, sir. I will never give you money. You are going to compensate me for my glasses. You're trying to get money out of me. You are the devil. God will rebuke you for your sins. You are evil. You're red-faced like the devil. Yeah, I am. Good luck with your glasses.
All right. This did have Chris Grant in it. If you're saying, wait a minute, it was his twin brother, you're wrong. What strikes me about it, and it strikes me about the scene, and the other scene that we're going to look at, is it's like, and when you mentioned improv, it's the first thing I thought of. It's like a Larry David scene. Exactly. It's like a Larry David kind of real life, gets into weird things, right?
Absolutely.
So you I don't want to say impersonate, but borrow from J.B. Smoove a little bit, right? A little bit. And there's another clip. I don't know if we'll have time for it. You love playing that kind of character.
I love it.
It seemed like it.
Oh, I love it. I've done projects with that character. If you could typecast me in that character for the rest of my life, it's hilarious, and it is reflective of my nature. The hustler. So always got to make it.
You are not Cheap Chad?
Oh, I'm not Chad.
No, he's not Chad.
No, I don't look like a Chad.
You don't look like a
More of a Ronnie.
And then the name of your character in there?
African scam artist.
African scam artist.
I call him Babatunde.
Victor, how much of the creation is your creation, or is it a collaboration with all the people around you? Like, are you dictating it?
It's definitely a collaboration with everyone, especially the actors.
Especially because you allow them to improvise.
Right, but other than that, the script, I wrote maybe like 70% of it, and I had a
All right, before we run out of time, I want to show the other clip that does not, sorry Chris, does not have Chris in it. If we have time, we'll show the third one. But this I thought was hysterical. This is what made me think Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm. So,
about something else. I don't want ice in it. I just want the drink because you guys, you fill it to the rim with ice and then there's no drink in it. And I'm on to the tricks of places like this, okay? I don't want ice in it. I never order ice anywhere I go. You can ask her. Sorry, hold on. If you just no, but if you just didn't put ice in it, we can all go, right? We can all order and go. No, but I don't want it.
Traditional way
that's not. Get me the manager, please.
Oh my.
I know, sorry, but like I'm sorry. It's just the principle. It's the principle of it now. I don't want ice in it. I don't want ice in it. Okay. Oh my God.
Okay,
Look at who it is. It's the same.
I'm the
no,
manager.
stop.
That
no,
was my cousin.
No, you.
Is
it's
every
the same
Asian
person.
look same to you?
Excuse me?
To
No,
you?
no,
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 no. Then let's talk.
No, you're the same person. I'm not. You know.
That's my cousin.
He's very. I'm not racist. You're gonna make this about race now?
Look,
it's about ice.
Sir,
He's not a different person. He's the same
you're
person.
on camera.
He's screwing with me.
We are gonna
He's messing
call
with my mind.
security.
He's trying to drive me. Call ahead.
We're gonna
call
call
the bubble tea
security.
security.
Okay,
Go ahead,
well,
please.
no, you are
I will see
trouble.
what they say. No,
You
you
are
are.
very
You
good
are. No,
trouble,
you.
okay?
You
We
are a
have a lot
menace.
of
You are a
securities.
menace to society. The
Oh
fact that
my
listen,
God.
what kind of world do we live in? It doesn't matter when you just can't order a drink without ice, right? I mean, give me a break. I don't want ice. You know what? You know, I will go. And you know what? I'm gonna take a business card. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'm gonna take it.
You have to take care of your health.
I'm taking.
No,
I don't worry about my health. Don't worry about my health.
Take one.
I'm taking all of them. I'll take all of them and I'll get out of there. How about that? Good luck to all of you. Thanks a lot. No, yeah, congratulations. Oh, yeah. Good luck.
Oh, we're all getting a good laugh in here. Tremendous. I mean, I hope people follow that he wants a drink with no ice and it becomes a problem. Everybody's yelling at him. And then the guy, he says to the guy, I want to see the manager. He goes out, he goes back. Wait a minute, I'm the manager. Oh, my goodness. Victor, very, very, very good. What's your anticipation of timing and all that kind of stuff?
We plan to release around the summer, maybe the spring, but most likely the summer.
And the release will be like, how will people be able to see it or find it, or you'll come back here and we'll deal with it? We could.
Well, we have a couple of locations in mind. We have, so starting out from Queens, the movie is shot about Queens. So we have one in Coffee in Long Island City and QED
well,
in
I hope,
Astoria.
especially because he's a Bronx guy, I hope he's a scam artist, Bronx guy. Babatunde,
Babatunde, yeah.
Babatunde, see, I picked that right up. Well, great. Chris Grant, thank you so much
Pleasure.
for joining us.
Thank you.
We want to see more and more of you, and I want to see more stuff in that movie. And
welcome.
Victor, my friend, you want to take our
Thank you,
picture?
Gary.
We're live on the air while we're still
this is my
sitting
selfie
here.
stick right here.
So that should do it for the Bronx Buzz for 2018. We certainly want to thank all the journalists and writers and photographers and filmmakers and all the other special people who came in to report to us what's going on in the Bronx. Gave us a lot of insight as to the Bronx in 2018. But guess what? 2019 is right around the corner. So I want to thank you, people of the Bronx, for being with us on BronxNet Television, because of course we are your voice, your views, and your vision. And you can expect that we will be back with a lot more great stuff for you in 2019. Happy holidays, peace this year in the Bronx.